Screw all your Porsche concourse purists mirror under the car at a car show fair weather only drivers. A 911 is a year-round car.
Porsche 99 1.2.
Here we go. All right.
It's hot.
This is an all-wheel drive 991.2 with twin turbos, a true 7-speed 3-pedal manual transmission, and snow tires. It's as glorious as you think it is. An all-wheel drive 911 is just as capable in the snow as a WRX or Evo or Volvo. It just has way more power and a distracting appearance. Ground clearance is an issue. We're not going to drive this into the fallow field behind the parking lot. But on snowy roads, this thing rips.
Remember speed limit.
I can't follow that. Slow down, please.
Oh, slow down, please.
Sorry about that. That looked just a little too fun to ignore.
The owner Arpod told a story about how he was driving this 991.2 in the first Pennsylvania snow of this year. People were honking, giving him that palm up, what are you doing gesture, following him around, flashing their lights. So Arpod downshifted, spun all 4 wheels, made 4 rooster tails, and left him in a cloud of fluff and confusion. There are Porsches you pamper, and then there are Porsches you enjoy savagely. At the same time, the seats are more supportive than a gay best friend in a 1990s rom-com. And the heated seats and heated steering wheel are nuclear. The anti-stall saves you from looking like a chode, and the same goes for the auto rev matching. And the upholstery stitching is vector file perfect. My dick is a goblin in need of extermination. Porsche. For real this time. This car is a 12-piece bucket of crazy that has no business racing around on the road. Don't get me wrong, it's every bit as capable as you probably heard, and every bit the year-round car you weren't expecting it to be. People have a certain perception about Porsches, and it informs their opinion on their capabilities, because why would the fast car people make something I could daily in the Salt Belt? Well, history bestows reputation, but reputation can be misleading. The brochure announces this car as true to the old established Porsche principle, form follows function. And I suppose that's true, in a way. Porsche has been refining the rear engine, rear drive, flat engine layout since before Pete Best regretted all of his decisions. And that history matters. But over time, Porsche seemingly began to use its history selectively, comparing cars like this 991 favorably against previous models while encouraging you to yearn for a guttural, naturally aspirated past. This car features the newly developed 3-liter 6-cylinder bi-turbo flat-six engine, which boasted reduced fuel consumption and a decrease in exhaust emissions totaling 14%. According to the brochure, the engine type is the 9A2, making 420 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, and 368 pound-feet of torque, anywhere between 1,700 RPM to all the way up to 5,000 RPM. The redesigned engine utilizes a 2-part vertically divided crankcase in a closed-deck design with integral crankcase thrust block. Do not use my Eddie Bauer tube socks. I come in them these days. Just the Eddie Bauers. It's an engine that likes to talk a good game about offering a naturally aspirated sound despite the turbochargers, but you can't really hear the engine any better than you can see it. Forget what the brochure says. This simply doesn't make that naturally aspirated roar. It just whizzes like a party favor. And that's advertising. I get it. And sometimes advertising is true. But there's a presumption that this is what we want to hear, that we value history, but only insofar as that history offers a reputation that will rub off on us simply by virtue of us being within its orbit. The implication being that it's less about merit and more about the appearance of superiority. Porsche's history allows it to command a high price and teary-eyed reverence. And in rural Pennsylvania, a 911 draws strange attention. Bystanders ask probing questions like, how fast does it go? Where do you live? And a more insulting question that we'll talk about in a minute. Bystanders go on to say that they have fast cars too. I have an M3. I have a Scat Pack Charger. My F-150 has a V8. And you're thinking, so? What's going on here is defense mechanisms are rising to protect egos which are now shaken to the core in the presence of this thing. A Hellcat and a 991.2 are not equal. This Porsche is superior and they know it. Look at it. It's built with care. Every surface is pleasing to the touch. Its shape is organic and fluid. And it's built by a company that wins races. Yes, a Hellcat or similar muscle car makes bigger numbers, but those numbers only blossom on a drag race track. Not out here on public roads with off-camber corners, varying surfaces, gravel, ruts, other drivers, semi-truck wind wash, and weather. A 911 cuts through all of that and is fast in all conditions. But climbing to the top of PennDOT's dominance hierarchy costs money. And this brings us to the insulting question people ask you. How much is it? Oh, shut up. No, I want to know. I'm in the market. No, you're not. If you ask how much is a 911, it means you're going to get a Corvette. How much? The official question of wearing Brute cologne and asking, does the carpet match the drapes? How much does it cost? Brought to you by men who neg. I'll bet you ask a bartender to list the prices on every draft. How much? Ugh. I'll bet your kids are ugly too. In a Wu-Tang way, cash rules everything. Because meritocracies don't exist in the auto world any more than they do at the Oscars. And yet, Porsche's history isn't there to simply justify inflating the number of digits that go on either side of the comma. It's there to provide a window into the identity of the brand, which is very much tied to its history. The manual states that the engine improvements correspond to, quote, the largest increase in torque that has ever been achieved with the introduction of a new engine in the history of the Porsche 911 Carrera. For the performance of both models, this means increased elasticity combined with direct responsiveness and high revving ability. Which is fine, but all this quote really does is read like the foundational mythology of a culture that failed by virtue of existing. It's upgrade culture made manifest. Planning ahead to the next iPhone as you unbox the one you just bought. Looking ahead to the next Porsche, even as the one you're driving commands the wintry roads better than its reputation would suggest. The manual adds, the sound of a flat engine is something very special and contributes significantly to this particular emotional driving experience in a 911 Carrera. The sound is especially emotional in the higher engine speed range. The use of turbo technology in the 911 Carrera models naturally affects the character of the engine sound. So here we have this strange juxtaposition of both praise and dismissal of the 911 Carrera. History is selectively applied. In one instance, it's a node of comparison to what's been achieved over time, an evolution naturally occurring and inevitable as Thanos, and in the next, it's used as a reference point for sentimentality, because Porsche is Iron Man. We're the culmination of every fault we've ever had. It creates a juxtaposition to how history is used, to where a car is both separate from and yet in bondage to its predecessors. Even as Porsche plays on its history for cultural cachet, it also yearns to be free of the grotesque weave of a history now deemed insufficient in the light of new advancements. Even as that history, and its impossibly long reputation, is why a car like this can command such reverent attention. Driving impressions. Fast isn't fun. Fast isn't fun. Grass isn't a pun. A 911 hushes up to unlawful speeds with no conversation, no tactile or audible cues. Acceleration is smoother than an Instagram model's photoshopped upper lip. A 911 is a steel roller coaster. It's fun in a mathematically cold way. Equations and computers deliver consistent retail excitement every time. And that's why putting a 911 on snow tires and taking it out in emergency conditions and bringing your dog along is right. Introduce chaos and a Porsche comes alive.
We'll drive any Porsche to any box junction to test out the theory that form follows function. It may be news to me, good for all seasons.